We're recording.
Okay. You can go ahead and start then.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Paradyme. We're hoping you're having a great beginning of the new year. Depending on when you're listening to this, I hope it's been continuing well. So before we get started, today we're going to discuss an idea from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, authored by Stephen Covey. We really enjoy this book. Going back and rereading it, this chapter by chapter, it's been really beneficial to go back and get those ideas. So we highly recommend you pick it up. Again, that's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Before we start in the topic, we want to welcome you. We want to say follow the channel. See the description down below for all of our social media information. Subscribe. Hit the little bell next to the subscription button. Like the video. Comment. Leave us some answers to the questions we're going to ask you guys today. Ask us some questions. We want to grow along with you. So we're going to start with an opening question. What is one thing you could do, something you aren't doing now, that if you did it on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? So think about that. Drop that down in the comment section down below. Maybe we'll mention some of ours throughout today's podcast, but we really want to hear what you got to say. So today's topic comes from chapter 3, habit 3, putting first things first. And it's talking about life's 4 quadrants of time management. So this thing is broken down into a time management matrix. Sounds a little complex. It's not very complex. It's just broken down into an XY axis where we have urgency on our X, importance on our Y. And it'll be dropped right here on wherever our editor, Devin, puts it on screen. So take a look at that. We have urgency lining up with importance, right? So Stephen Covey defines urgent as requiring immediate attention. Urgent things act on us. He also defines importance as it has to do with results, right? If something is important, it contributes to your mission, your values, and your high priority goals. So what we'll talk about today is each of the quadrants, where they fall in the urgency and importance matrix. And we'll start with David defining quadrant number 1.
Thank you for that, Jay. All right, everybody. So quadrant 1, right? These are both urgent and important activities. If you're looking at that graph, that's going to be the top left-hand side in that graph. These tend to be activities that deal with significant results that require immediate attention, right? So we're thinking crises, pressing problems, deadline projects, things that have a lot of urgency. People who operate here are typically like crisis managers, problem-minded people, or deadline-driven producers. These, you could think of this quadrant, I kind of like to think of it as just super stressful area to operate from. You could say that the people that operate here are problem-centered, right? Think of it as, you're knocking out these problems one by one, but each one coming is like a wave, and it's just wiping you out every time. And every time you get back up, you're just already preparing for that next wave to hit you and knock you down. Although these tasks can get done, you could say the benefit is just that you're solving some pretty high urgent, highly important activities, such as like a heart attack or something, right? That would be very important. You need to take care of that right away. They do get done, but other activities along the same sort of wavelength, it has a high tendency for you to get burnt out, and it's very stressful. Overall, it's sort of a poor center to manage yourself from. It's a poor management style. Although those things do need to get done from time to time, if you're operating solely in that quadrant, you're going to get burnt out pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. I like the description how you mentioned that it's like a wave, right? Because you can solve one quadrant, one activity. There's always going to be another one, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are just more of like the most pressing problems, right? So if I get a call from, I don't know, my little brother, right? And he's like, hey, something's, I don't know, in a fight with mom or dad at home or something. I need you to pick me up like right now. It's like dangers involved, usually something like that. that's a high urgent, very important thing. I need to go help him get him out of there or something like that.
Right.
So
You're like a firefighter putting out the fire.
Right.
right.
And I would say, a majority of people live their life handling quadrant 1 activities. That's where they live a majority of their life.
Mhm.
Stephen Covey even defines it, he draws it out where the quadrant 1 is taking up 70, 80, 85% of someone's lifetime.
Right. And then the sort of antidote to that, or where people escape to, is like we'll talk about that in a second, but this quadrant 4 activities, because they're not urgent, not important.
Right. But before we get to that, let's discuss the protein of this idea that Stephen Covey brings in, and he mentions quadrant 2. And Devin, I'd like you to define a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of let's shifting the gears from thinking about things that are urgent, picking up urgent phone calls like David was explaining. I think an easy example to understand why things are important to urgent is thinking of a to-do list. People create to-do lists all the time. They just create a bunch of things on a list and try to manage everything rather than effectively moving towards their purpose or their mission in life. And that's where a lot of people derive a lot of their purpose from. They get stuck in this way of moving into things that are urgent, but they're not important at all. And so that's what Stephen Covey tries to portray in the matrix, the time management matrix. Is we're trying to get more people, or what he's trying to convey is get more people to understand why things are important compared to why you don't want to be dealing with things all the time that are urgent. You want to be more in the important pool of your life. And so a good definition that I found in the book is the objective of quadrant 2 management is to manage our lives effectively from a center of sound principles, from a knowledge of our personal mission statement, with the focus on the important as well as the urgent, and within the framework of maintaining a balance between increasing your production and increasing your production capability. So I think good examples obviously are like networking, right? It's not urgent to always go out and connect with people and build relationships with other people, but networking in specific environments such as a career or maybe your social group can get you a lot further in a very specific dynamic rather than trying to do everything yourself. It's not urgent. You don't need to do it all the time, but it is important. Another one is scheduling and planning. Obviously, you don't need to plan every single hour, every single second, but to know where you want to be in the next year, to know where you want to be in the next month is a good habit to develop. The problems behind this, behind strategizing or thinking about where you want to land or what's important, what's not important. A lot of people can get stuck in the strategizing method in their head, thinking too much, overthinking. If you try to strategize everything that's important, then you're left overthinking rather than taking action. I think some of the benefits are becoming more aware of where you want to land in life. In my own opinion, I think not everything, not all your personal mission statement, not all of your purpose is important, right? Some people dedicate their career. That's the most important thing. Some people do family. So I think Stephen Covey always refers back to the personal mission statement, understanding your purpose, understanding what your principles are, is because at the end of the day, you have to be able to take the information from this book and apply it to the things that are personal to you. Not everything is a general insert and run with. So I think the awareness, to wrap it up with the urgency of not the urgency, but quadrant number 2 is awareness of understanding the control of important things in your life rather than living in the urgent side of your life is a great way of looking at it.
I think that was great how you wrapped up how it kind of reflects your personal mission statement. How about what fits in each quadrant could be a little bit different per you. So I thought that was great. One thing, and this is a question to anybody who wants to answer, but I was thinking about while you're talking, Dev, because you mentioned like to-do lists and like planning stuff. How would you stop somebody from, I guess, living their life on a to-do list, where like everything's always on the to-do list and like that's just how you're living your life? Would you solve that with a quadrant problem, or what do you guys think?
I think for me, at least what works for me, I know everything isn't going to work for everybody, but I think is understanding where do you want to end up, if it's the next month, the next year. If you have something in your planner, let's just say a to-do thing, to take your dog for a walk, and maybe your dog isn't the most important thing in your life, and it takes up an hour of your day every single day. Maybe you may want to shift your focus on, hey, let me cut 30 minutes out of that and put it towards studying more in my career field. I think it's acknowledge and becoming aware of what you want. If your dog or your cat is the most important thing, and that's what you want your dog or your cat to be a more emotional part of your life, then you give more time to that. If you don't want that, then you take less time from that. Just because you set an hour to that to-do list doesn't mean it can never be changed. Just alter it as you are developing your important things in life.
Mm-hmm. I would throw the dog thing, animals, into more of a quadrant 3 or 1 activity, right? I think John can attest, being a great dog owner, that, depending on your level of, being a good animal owner, you're either going to put that into, this is important and it's urgent, or this isn't quite urgent but it's important. The first thing you got to do, for Stephen Covey says here, is if you want to get away from to-do lists, you need to pull away from quadrant 4 activities, and I'll get into what quadrant 4 is, but you pull from things that aren't urgent, you pull from things that are not important, right?
Okay.
So that's quadrant 4. A lot of people would pull from quadrant 4 or quadrant 3 activities, and I think that that's a good idea to get away from to-do lists. I think coming back to like what Devin said and what Stephen Covey really enunciates on is, you need to have an understanding of what's important to you, right? And that in the beginning of this book, how he has us do, like, hey, imagine you're at a funeral. And imagine you go to that funeral and you see it's you. What are you have 4 people that are going to be talking at your funeral. What do you want them to say? Right? Go through that example, deal with that, and you'll figure out what's really important to you. And then from there, you can make decisions like, maybe I'm at a career and I'm spending a lot of my time in quadrant 1 dealing with deadlines for a career, but I genuinely don't think it's important to me. Right? So this to-do list, as a whole, it could just be 100% garbage to me, because I don't care about any of that. Right?
Gotcha.
So you really got to understand what's important to you, and then create a to-do list that's around becoming that person.
That kind of reminds me of what you just said, was in Yes Man, the movie with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He's living his whole life in quadrant 1, and he doesn't have time for anything else. So he gets cursed to say yes to everything, so he has to spend time on different things, But it's always about work and crisis, right? It's all he cares about. And he'll lie and cheat and say anything to make it happen right then and there.
Yeah, that's a great example, dude. I totally forgot about that movie. That is exactly right.
Shout out to Jim Carrey.
Yeah, so I have an open question for you guys too. Why do you think most people neglect quadrant 2, seeing as it's important, but it doesn't really press on them, right? Go ahead.
Because it's a sorry, I got really excited. I don't really clear thought. It's because it's the hardest one. It's the hardest one. I don't know. Sorry, you go, David. Because it takes time to think it through, And so it's I think of it like math, to get the right answer, you have to have the right equation.
Yeah.
And you got to find the right formula to do that, right? And I think a lot of people, it's just a lot of preliminary work, and they rather just not do that. But for me personally, after reading this, I think I spent most of my time in there. And so if you get all the preliminary stuff done, everything else ends up being easy.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example? You said you kind of think about it like math, but give me an example. You said it's hard.
I think
just okay, go for it.
Go finish it.
I was gonna say let's say some people, when they wake up in the morning, it's oh shit, beep beep beep. I think of an alarm going off, and they're running to put their pants on and go out the door, and they didn't do anything to get themselves now equals tomorrow, when I go to sleep, my clothes are laid out, I already have Ace's food ready to go. I already have my smoothie for breakfast is already in the blender in the fridge. I just gotta pull it out and press the button. So I did all that stuff last night. That was like a preliminary thing to prepare me for tomorrow, you know? But so when I wake up, I don't feel rushed. I feel like, you know, start the morning good, right? And it's only because I spent like 15 minutes that night to just get myself straight. And like it saved me 30 minutes the next day, you know?
Yeah.
Right. I kind of do that too. I'll set up the coffee maker the night before, so that way as soon as I wake up, I just press the button and we're good to go. I don't gotta like do all the shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
To answer your question, Jay, there's a pretty good example in the book that he mentions too, is that most people recognize the value of quadrant 2 activities in their life, whether they identify them as such or not, and they attempt to give priority to those activities and integrate them into their lives through self-discipline alone. But without a principle center, right? We're talking about principle centers, mission statements. Without those things, most people don't have the foundation to sustain that effort because they know that it's important to do that, but they're not like disciplined enough to actually like follow through with them. It's like, oh, it's like important, but it's like, I'm not gonna really, I'll do it like later or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
they never really get to do those things, and it never compounds. So yeah.
I guess that fits with the book too. When this whole book's about creating good habits, and when you said that, I was like, well, that's when you make that a habit. You know, everything's hard until you make it a habit, then it becomes like second nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One thing for me was especially like studying and I think it's the time management in my head, how I think of time. If I spend too much time doing, or I create this like, let's just use the word matrix. I use this matrix in my head that like, it's going to take too long. So I keep pushing it back, keep pushing it back, keep pushing it back. But it's more important than going to my regular day job. Obviously the regular day job is going to be urgent and going to give me the things I need to get paid or things that I need to do. But the important thing to do is develop where I want to end up in life, develop the long-term vision. That's a lot harder because I'm thinking of that's going to take forever. It's going to take a long time. So I'm going to keep pushing it back, push it back, push it back. I can go to the job and make money. That's cool. Like it's instant, it's fast, it's easy.
Right.
But if I want to develop something that may take a lot, maybe a year, a couple months, I'll continue to push that back and back, further back in life.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I've been reading, there's this book I've been reading titled The Heart of the Teachings of Buddha, or The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings, and combined with 12 Rules of Life for Life by Jordan Peterson. You know, I think a lot of people neglect Quadrant 2 because it's not going to be pressing on them. One, right? It's not an urgent activity. And two, it's like, it's important, but is it worth suffering for? Right? The word suffering came up a lot in 12 Rules for Life, and the word suffering comes up a lot in Buddhist teachings. But I think one thing to remember for a lot of people, that they need to remember that life in general is suffering, right? You're going to suffer for something, whether it's going to be success in your career, raising your kids, going to the gym. You just have to find an activity that's worth suffering for. Right.
Just an example. I love Ace, my dog, but he fucked up my couch and I had to suffer.
My wallet took the suffering.
Yeah. So I got a new couch. So it's all good. But,
right. Yeah. Definitely. So, Quadrant 2, I think people that live the happiest lives, live principle-based lives, live based on a personal mission statement, have a good understanding of what's important to them, live a lot of their life in Quadrant 2. And, people that really do, look around the people in your life and, ask them, what's important to you and how do you live your life based on, what's important, not always what's just urgent. So
yeah, I like how that example that you gave, Jay, that things are, how I heard it was the things that are urgent are usually visible. They're usually right in front of us and we can see them. Right. Things that are important are usually further down the road that we can't, they're invisible. They're like, we can acknowledge it in our brain, but it's not here. We can't touch it. And I think a great example that Stephen Covey gives in the book is urgent matters are usually visible. They press on us. They insist on action. They're often popular with others. They're usually right in front of us, and often they are pleasant, easy, fun to do, but so often they are unimportant.
Right.
I think that's a lot of people fall into that category. If it's having fun, if it's doing things that you're just used to doing, it's not important. But we continue to do it because we built up this habit over time.
Definitely. So I'm going to move us into quadrant 3 here. So quadrant 3 are the activities, looking at the bottom left of our matrix here, that are not important, but they are urgent, right? So some examples of these are going to be, cleaning your room, doing the laundry, doing dishes. These are urgent things that need to be done, but they aren't quite the most important things in our life, right? So I would think for myself, being a competent geologist is one of the most important things to me. Doing the dishes doesn't apply to that, right? Cleaning my room doesn't quite apply to that. But these are things that, they're known as the mundane tasks of life, but they kind of, people typically spend a good amount of time in this too, right? Stephen Covey has a good example in the book where most people, let's say we're in an interview or we're having a discussion, a professional sit-down meeting. If that person gets a phone call, they're not likely to send them a text like, hey, give me a call back in 15 minutes. I'm in a meeting, right? Or I'll give you a call when I'm available. They'll pick that up because it's urgent. They don't know if it's important or not, but they know the urgency of this phone call requires them to pick it up. I mean, how many of you guys would not pick up that phone call and continue with your meeting? It takes a different type of disciplined individual.
100%. I get, like, during the workplace, you get phone calls all the time, and I'm just like, hey, dude, like, you should know I'm at work right now.
Right.
I'll call you later. I ignore calls, and I think that's normal. I think it'd be weird to answer the call during the meeting. I don't know about you guys personally.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
But let's say you have a wife, you have kids, and you see that name pop up on your phone. Same thing?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, maybe, but like, it's just weird. It's like, hey, I don't know. I never think when I'm going to call it, I'm going to get bad news. So maybe if you're like thinking it's going to be bad news, you're like worried. But
yeah.
Deborah, I'm at work.
Yeah. Well, if I'm in the middle of a meeting and I get a call, I'm not answering it, regardless if he's calling. To be honest.
Yeah, and that's good. I think that's how a lot of people should be, right? But there's people that are like so entrained and they've been trained on just urgency, that when they're in these types of important meetings or not important meetings, that urgency takes precedent over anything important.
It's an easy habit to get accustomed to. I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to, you're doing something and then you get a notification on Instagram or
I got to check it right away.
And your hand's already going to your phone. You're like, oh shit, like I was totally focused on work right now, Right.
And that can be, there's things that need to be done, but understand that the importance of these things, right? I think, John, you have a really good understanding of what's important. When you're at your job, my job's more important than my phone, right? I think that's a good place to be. Some people don't live like that, though. Some people are more urgency reliant than more on important reliant. I think, knowing you for so long, you're definitely, this is important versus this, which is urgent. I think that you have a good understanding of that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
definitely. So, while you do need to do these things, understand they have a time and a place. Like John said, hey, if I'm at work and I get a call, I understand that. Look, I'm teaching these kids, students is more important.
It's one thing. If I'm at work, like, maybe I can answer the call, but during the meeting, which was the question, I would say no.
Yeah.
So.
And you're probably in your head like that would be a quadrant 3 activity kind of, because you're like, oh, it's important that I call back my mom or whoever called me, but it's not, or it's not
that makes sense. I was literally in a meeting on Friday trying to figure out like some grading situation because it was the end of the quarter, and my dad called me while I was in the middle of a meeting when I was trying to figure it out, and I called him back. I didn't answer, obviously, and he was talking about like he wanted to talk to me about like some food or something, like something very unimportant. You know what I'm saying? He's like, I don't know. So I'm like, yeah, okay, the cheese. Okay, that's cool. I'll talk to you later.
He's like, so you're gonna come watch the playoffs over here, boy?
Yeah, some very unimportant stuff, Yeah.
Right, definitely. So, speaking of not important, I'm gonna bring us into quadrant 4. These are not urgent and not important activities. It's gonna be on the bottom right of that diagram that Devin's gonna put on our screen here. These tend to be activities that people retreat to simply escape reality. We've all done it. We all do it, right?
In the metaverse.
I'm out of here. I'm over here bowling virtually with my homies, But, some examples of these: metaverse, TV, video games, social media. Some of these tasks you can really label as time wasters, right? A lot of people, they live their whole, like 90% of their day inside of, quadrant 1. And then once they're done with quadrant 1, straight to quadrant 4. Let me just watch Netflix and zone out, right? Let me just escape reality until I have to jump back into the stuff again.
Damn.
That's how a lot of people live their life. And, I understand people want to relax, right? But
Right.
there's a time and a place for everything, right?
Right.
There are some slight benefits to some limited quadrant 4 time. There's some stress relief that you can get. And I think that's why a lot of people retreat to it so often. It's like, hey man, I'm stressed. There's a lot on my plate. Let me just retreat to quadrant 4 and just chill. Right. But there's some serious stress relief activities that you can do inside quadrant 4, like, going on a hike, your going on a camping trip, just all out, just relaxing and resting. There's a time for rest, and it's important.
You want to watch like a movie. It's like, what I mean? It's just and I'm glad we're mentioning this too, because, for the listeners, we're going to mention balance, and that's a huge part of even operating within all of these quadrants,
Right. Yeah, definitely. You need rest, right? Not even the best of us spend 100% of their time in quadrant 2, right? Or 50-50 quadrant 1, quadrant 2. You have to sleep. You know what I mean? You have to chill and hang out with your wife and give her some of your time sometimes. You know what I mean? There's appropriate times. Nah, bro. She's on her own.
You don't need to spend time with the kids. This is not
built different. I'm built different. Y'all sleep? Nah.
You need to hang out with your friends. You need
25-8.
You, Gary. Just sleep 4 hours a day.
I think a good example that I always think of in my head. I saw a video of Jordan Peterson talk about pushing your boundaries and pushing your threshold in any aspect of life.
A girl told me that one time.
No.
If it's any aspect of life, if it's like working out, if it's your job, do it as if it's, let's say, your job, right? The example he gives is your work. You're at work. If you only spend 40 hours a week at your job, push yourself to 80 hours and see how you operate under that 80 hours working every single week. How long can you do it? How effective are you? And then at least you gauge, okay, I can push 80 hours, then you gauge it back. Then you get to figure out, where can I relax? Where can I where can I add in the relaxed time? But I'm maxing myself out in my quadrant 1, quadrant 2 areas that are important, that need some urgency, but I still have that quadrant 4 in my life.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Definitely. So I think that's a perfect example that Jordan Peterson gave. Obviously we just read his book, but he always advocates if you don't know where you lie with any aspect of life, push it as hard as you possibly can. If it's 20 hours, 40 hours, 80 hours a week, then scale back. Find it first and then scale back, and you'll find out how hard you can push yourself.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So that defines our 4 quadrants. That defines the matrix. We want you to, leave some comments down below. This idea may not resonate with some people, and, even some of us here. It might not resonate as much with you as it does with the next person. And that I wanted to bring that to John. He had some ideas that he wanted to express about the time matrix and his time management, how he manages his time.
Yeah, just because we're rereading this right now, and I was talking amongst the guys, and even when I first read this, I just think the whole time matrix seems a little bit overcomplicated for me. I get it, and when we talk about it, I like the key points to it, but I think oftentimes it can be a lot simpler than that. In the book, a couple things that it points out that I think are just great little adverbs are, one thing is, to have good principles of time management are independent will, self-awareness, discipline, and then discipline derives from the word disciple, so that means you're a student, so you're always working at something. And really the biggest thing is, if for me, I think it seems just a lot to be like, that's a quadrant 1 thing, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. I think primarily if you live a lot of your life in the quadrant 2, I think everything else just fills out naturally,
Right.
So that'd be my big takeaway, is that you do your preventatives, you kind of see, you're self-aware of where things are going, and all that stuff, I think everything else fills out on its own. You know, urgent things come up and you handle them. You don't even think about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
On your downtime, you use it, but you're wary of that, like, of the clock, you know, and you're like, okay, I gotta get back to doing what I'm doing, you know, because you assess that when you're in quadrant 2 already, you know.
Right. You know, so you know, you were mentioning before we started recording that it didn't resonate as much to you. So I want to know, you know, you just mentioned, you know, quadrant 2, if you live your life in quadrant 2, just taking the quadrant idea out of it, if you can mention how you manage your time. Is it independent will? Is it importance? Like, what are the big things that you really try to balance and manage with your time?
For me, it goes, I guess, like duty or responsibility.
Okay.
So duty and responsibility. One, I have my dog, you know, so I have to let him out, feed him, etc. And then another duty responsibility would be work, you know. So between taking care of an animal and work, after that, all that's good. The next thing would be gym, you know. And after that, everything else falls into place. Like, of course, I need to make dinner and wash the dishes. And then I won't have plates to eat off of, you know. Like, I gotta do laundry. Sometimes it builds up, but like, you take care of it, you know. You gotta do it eventually. So.
Oh yeah.
From the time I met you, John, you've had a pretty good routine. So I feel like you've already built like the habits of knowing what's important, what's not urgent. You know, like every Monday through Friday, you'd be like, "Yeah, bro, I can't do this day," and I was going out like Thursday, Wednesday. Sometimes you're like, I can't go out till Saturday. You know what I mean? Because you knew everything you had to do.
I guess it's a big thing. I've always had a routine for myself. Typically, Monday through Friday is like the rule. Monday through Friday, and that's just been habitual. Maybe I've seen it with my parents, you know, how they operate.
Yeah, definitely.
And John's a good example. He's successful, and he goes to the gym, and he lives a very great self-managed life because I think he does these things just subconsciously. You know what I mean?
Okay. So let's take the activities that John stated and put them into the time matrix idea, right? Time management matrix idea. John's first two things he said, right? These are the first things that he brought up. Being a dog owner and work. What are those classified as in the time management matrix?
Well, I think the work would obviously be quadrant 1, definitely, okay. And then any dog owner, any animal owner would be quadrant 4. Would be not. Well, it depends on, like, obviously it's important.
Let's take it as John. As John, this is John that we're talking about.
Well, I think there's some urgency to it only because, like, your dog needs to, like, piss, poop, and eat, like, at the bare minimum, right?
Right.
Maybe they're both quadrant 1.
Okay, I would agree with that. Both those first activities he mentioned were quadrant 1 activities. I think they're both urgent, like he said, work and being a dog owner, a good animal owner, because there's a difference between a good animal owner and somebody that just has an animal, right? And then work. You know, there's urgent, and both of those are both urgent and both important. Now, the next thing he said, right, and I want David to classify this one, gym.
I would classify that as quadrant 2.
Quadrant 2? Okay. And then everything else falls in line. That's what he said, right? Mm-hmm. So of his highest importance, his highest priority, excuse me, quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, right? And knowing John, living life with John, knowing how John is, he does spend a lot of time in quadrant 2. He knows what's important to him and he follows it. And so while he might not resonate with the idea of the quadrants, he still lives by his code, right? Quadrants will only help you if you have a code, right? If you don't have a code, you will be subjected to quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. Quadrant 1, quadrant 4, and quadrant 3 activities. You need a code. Develop it. Personal mission statement. Pick up this book because it really does build on itself, right? You get a foundation of what it is to be proactive, what it is to be reactive, right? John's a very proactive person. Devin, they're proactive people. They chase what they want because they have a code. Personal mission statements, right? Time management. These are things, it's not like you become great at these things overnight, right? This takes conscious work, serious work, consistent, right? develop a code. None of these concepts are going to be a solve all problems type of thing. You need to have a code, and you need to be consistent with these things. Yeah.
Consistency. I think that's a big pull for anything, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think consistent. If you have everything you're saying, Jay, the code, the principal mission, the personal mission statement, your purpose, everything is kind of written down somewhere. You figured it out, but you're not consistent. What's the reason behind having it written and doing it if you're not going to stay up to date with it? If you're not going to live by your code, if you're not going to move forward in your purpose, what's the point of even knowing it? You're not acting on it.
Right. Be conscientious about your code. That's going to be a big one, right? Now equals tomorrow doesn't mean anything if you don't have a code for tomorrow. What do you want?
Bar.
Bar.
Bar alert.
So you need to develop a code.
You need a thing. It's like,
and understand, hey, we're all subject to slip, right? We're humans, right? We all slip. And so understand that we don't have the answers. Nobody out there has the answers. You have it inside your own head, and it's just about being consistent with that. There's two voices inside your head, right? There's a mediocre person that's like, oh, just grab a pizza. Let's watch the game. And then there's a person inside your head that's like, it's time to get up and quit being a punk and do this. Whatever this is to you, listen to that inner genius. That's what I define it as. It's called an inner genius, and listen to it, because that's what's going to take you. That's what's going to take you to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was watching Shrek, Donkey didn't think he's mediocre. He pulled that dragon, and he made that girl his own, So
Dragon Donkey Baby.
When I was watching Shrek,
Donkey never thought he was mediocre. He was a talking donkey, and he stood by that.
Oh man, that was hilarious. All right, so we're gonna be wrapping this episode up, but I just had a couple more questions. If you have instituted this into your life, how has it been beneficial? If you haven't instituted it in your life, how could you see this being beneficial to a person that doesn't manage their time well?
Is that a question for us?
For anybody, yeah, for all you guys. And drop it down in the comments down below.
Yeah, you guys. I definitely, once our audience starts picking up, I definitely want comments. I definitely want people to debate us. Like, if this is unemployment, more people like John that think like you can develop your own time management within your own disciplined routine. But I think it's a double-edged sword. I think there's not a double-edged sword, but I think there's a benefit, and I think there's problems behind having too much urgent or quadrant 2 life events in your, like, everything is quadrant 2. Right. I think there still is burnout. I think there still is room for not really living your life. You're living based on the morals or the ethics that you want to be the top of the top every single day. And I think there is time to relax. I think there is time to kind of hang out with your family, hang out with your play some video games, kick back, kick your shoes off. You know what I mean? Relax. But I think realistically, the urgency behind quadrant 2 is just to figure out where you want to land in life. That's how I see it. Is like, where do you want to end up? How do you get there? And what's your plan? And are you acting on it? That's I keep it for me. I think that's how I look at it. But Stephen Covey, again, get this book, 7 Habits. You'll understand why this is so important to us.
Right.
And I think a lot of people understand why all of this information is important.
Yeah. Just to touch off what Dad was talking about, how you can, I guess, be in quadrant 2 too much. I was at the dog park and I was talking to this guy, and he also camps across the country, often with his wife and his dog, and they have like a van and stuff. But he says that he's like, yeah, I'm gonna work on the trip, and I was like, you're gonna work on the trip? How?
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and I would love to say I've been using How to Change Someone's Mind, the Catalyst, a lot at the dog park recently as like a little experiment. I want to talk to you guys about that later. But anyway, he said that he has a whole trip planned out by the hour. The whole country. Like 2 weeks. And I was like, by the hour? And I'm like probing. I'm like, well, what happens when you have to deviate? Because obviously, like, that's impossible, right?
Right.
And he's like, I'm able to adapt. He goes, I got gatas and wanas. I got to do this. I'd want to do this. But
Mhm.
it just showed that he spent a lot. He's retired. He spent a numerous amount of time in Quadrant 2 because I think he finds joy in it. But
Right.
Yeah.
to me, I was like cringe. I could never plan anything out till like the day sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
I like a vague goal, and how I
Yeah.
get there is like fine by me, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's intense. Like, dude, especially with like,
You
Kobe
can
said,
relate. Uh-huh.
yeah, Kobe says in this book, when it comes to planning your time, be efficient, but when it comes to planning with people, be effective. And if
Right.
and if he's crossing the country with his wife, the efficiency versus effective balance has got to be tough,
Yeah.
Hell
I
yeah.
think I highlighted it. It said you can't expect efficiency out of people.
Yeah.
And at the time when I was working, I was having a hard time with that. If you guys remember, I was always venting about how the subcontractors were always late and they were always like not well with their time management. And I was like, your poor time management is messing up my time management because I gotta revolve around you guys. And
Right.
then I was like, I can't expect people to be efficient. Like they're not machines. They're like, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. How about you, Davey? You have anything? Do you see how this could be beneficial? How you've put it into your life, or how how it's benefited you?
Yeah, man. Well, this I'll just mention too. I know we mentioned it a lot, but this book is so damn good because there's that's just one kind of part of this chapter too, the quadrant thing. I know we broke it down a lot, but there's
Excuse me.
beyond that, there's talking about like delegation, like balance, interdependence, stuff like that. And this living a quadrant two, I guess, life, or just knowing, if for lack of better term, just knowing how to differentiate between urgency and importance and living a principle centered life, having a mission statement. I wrote down, it helps you know your roles, and you could break that down weekly. For me, and what I've noticed is I'm living more of a balanced life, an organized life, and I kind of switch it up by a weekly goal, right? I'm not by the hour, by the minute in any sense on a to-do list, but I have like a to do for the week, and I kind of stick to that. That helps me a lot personally. It gives me enough balance that I have to work on what I got to do, not feel so under stress. It helps me to adapt to the daily things that life has, right? It's like if I got to do these things and then all of a sudden a quadrant one thing comes out of nowhere and I have to switch everything up entirely to focus on that, I don't got to feel bad about that because I know that I'm moving forward with my mission statement, and then I can kind of switch everything around to fit that need.
Yeah.
And it's helped me to, I know we didn't get to really touch on it, but just delegation, like it helps so much, and to really like work on interdependence and delegate duties to certain people. I kind of have to do that at work, and everything that we've learned and talked about helps me in that area. And you don't have to feel like you're a one man person. You have a team to rely on, and it overall leads to a better just way of living, I'd say. Just for me, I'm speaking for myself. So
Yeah. I think I wanna make a point real quick because you guys both gave different examples of how to schedule, right? Well, it wasn't for John, but John gave the example of the guy he met at the dog park that scheduled a whole trip by the hour for a whole, let's just say 6 months, right? That's a lot of planning every hour for the day. I tried to plan a week by the hour and I felt overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then you have what David was saying. Stephen Covey actually says this is the best way to plan your life is to schedule your life weekly. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do it 30 minutes every hour, and don't do it too far out where it's every year because it's hard to stay up to date with things like that. Kind of give if it's a happy medium. I think again it revolves around what you like. I think we're just giving the information from the book. We're giving you guys our personal experiences with things, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then looking for feedback from you guys and seeing what you guys what you guys do to kind of be productive, relax in life. So I think those are great examples for like how to schedule. Obviously, the daily thing is kind of hard, but it probably works for some people to be real.
Yeah, I mean, there's some intense people out there like David Goggins who plans by the hour. Straight up. There's those people. If that works for you, do that. I think for the average person, and for regular people that don't operate like that, the weekly idea is huge, right? Because you can focus on what's important, you can focus on what's urgent, and you can plan time to relax. So I think that's a really good, really good way to plan. I'm actually starting to do that now. We kind of have like this document we put all our stuff on, that kind of really helped this past week. That was like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I don't have to do this at Wednesday at 3:03 p.m. and need to have it done by 4:03 p.m. You know what I mean? I can be like, hey, Thursday, I'm going to work this in, right? So I think that it was really beneficial. So, before I take us out, I would say, hey, if you like this idea and you want to do it, drop it down in our comments and tell us how it's been working for you. I know for me, it's really helped me in learning how to identify certain activities and understanding that, hey, if I spend too much time in Quadrant 4, I'm not going to accomplish my goals in a manner of time that I'd like to, right? Or, hey, I need to do Quadrant 2 stuff this week so I don't just fall victim to the next wave that's coming in. So, it's been really beneficial as to recognize what things are urgent, what things are important, and where I need to put my priorities. And so let us know how you like it. Is there anything else you guys would like to mention?
I think we covered a lot. Covered a lot of information, honestly.
Yeah. Dave, I think you put a thing here underneath. How will people become better by using this concept? I think that'd be a great way to take us out, and then I'll do our outro.
On the question?
What? I'm sorry, what?
Right underneath. So what? This part. If you want to take us out on that.
On how people will become better by using this concept?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of mentioned it already. You get to know your roles. You live a balanced and organized life. You get to free up time because once you prioritize things, you get to see how much time you can make out of nothing, pretty much. Because we all have the same amount of hours, but to get more time, you prioritize. You can adapt to life's curveballs. You get to harmonize with your deepest values and mission. You, in a sense, become your own best self-personal manager. You see more outcome from leveraging delegation to others. You get to work on your interdependence. You get to see from a paradigm of importance rather than urgency. You become less dependent and more independent and interdependent. And a big one is that you get to learn how to say no, so that way you have a bigger yes to accomplish your goals.
Damn.
Awesome.
Muted, but yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Paradyme. We hope you really liked it. Drop a comment down below. What did you like from this episode? What did you pull from this episode that you want to incorporate into your life? Where do you spend most of your time? Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, Quadrant 4. We want to know. We want to know who's listening, right? So before you take off, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell next to the subscription button, like the video, comment down below, and follow us on all our social media platforms. We got a Spotify. If you ain't following the Spotify, what are you doing, bro? All right. I know you can't watch it all the time. Listen, right? All right.
Don't forget.
Before we take off, do not forget, David, what do they not forget, man?
The work you put in now equals who you'll be tomorrow.
Peace. Much love, y'all.
For your mama.